Good afternoon, Tobago, and good afternoon, those who are joining us for this press briefing from further afield. Thank you for joining us virtually. This morning, we convened a meeting of the Tobago Security Council. In this installation of our meeting, we had the presence of the minority leader and the minority councillor that joined the members of the executive of the Tobago House of Assembly, along with other stakeholders here in Tobago. That includes the TTPS led by ACP Hazel, the Defense Force led by Lieutenant McKenna, the Coast Guard by Naval Lieutenant Valentine. We also had representation from the Chamber of Commerce led by Mr. Williams, the Tourism and Hospitality Association by Mr. Alpha Lord, among other representatives, including senior public servants, as we discuss the issue of our current murder rate in Tobago. What we are experiencing on island is abnormal insofar as the quality of Tobago is concerned. And from where we sit, we want Tobago, even in this traumatic period, to be an example for the rest of the region and perhaps the world in how a community can be resilient and how a community can fight back against criminal elements. And so I am happy that the minority leader did in fact reach out and that we were able to have this meeting, and on common ground we can stand together this afternoon to reflect upon where we are at as an island and what we intend to do as an island, even with the resource constraints that we have. And even without regard for, or with regard for the fact that national security as a core legislative function remains a sixth scheduled item resident with the central government, as an island community, there are steps we must take on our own in ensuring that we put up a very good fight against those miscreants that are attempting to destroy our island paradise as we speak. There are a few items that I'm at liberty to share with you. And after I've shared these, I'll ask the minority leader to also share his perspective or some perspective with you. And then we will take questions from members of the media. And in your questioning, you are free to ask questions of both myself, the minority leader, and of course TTPS representative ACP Hazel, the Chamber of Commerce, or any of the parties seated behind me. So we are 19 murders, and I want us to look at this very practically. 19 murders, and these murders have all occurred with the use of illegal firearms. They have all occurred with the use of high-powered rifles or weapons for which Tobago is not a manufacturer. In fact, Trinidad and Tobago, we are not manufacturers of these weapons, but they are here and they are on our streets. And what we have seen is a mixture of internal and external pressures or influences that have resulted in these 19 acts of murders. Now, the first area that we had to look at is the area of border security, because these weapons are in fact making their way to our shores. And if we are not manufacturing them, that means they are coming from somewhere outside of Tobago. And so we looked at the issue of border security, and we remain troubled by the fact that our borders as it is quite porous. And the criminals, they are evading us by way of using their own vessels, their own craft, and making their way to our shores to deliver drugs and guns. And so we had to come up with a solution internally. In the interim, at least, until we are able to get the necessary assets to the Coast Guard that they have been wanting for quite a while. And so the decision was taken that in this intervening period, while we await the Ministry of National Security being able to provide the Coast Guard in Tobago with vessels, that we will provide the Coast Guard in Tobago with two things. One, will provide them with access to land-based transportation so that they will be able to make it in between the two operational bases and drive around the coastline of Tobago. So we have an operational base at Charlottesville and another at Scarborough, and there is a need for them to be able to physically move from base to base in order to do their reconnaissance. And so we'll provide land-based transport for them. Secondly, the Tobago House of Assembly will immediately see to procure by way of rental of appropriate vessels. We are looking at 2 perhaps fishing vessels. We won't have the funds to do large vessels, the kinds that the Coast Guard is accustomed to, but we want to procure 2 vessels by way of rental vessels, and we are not talking about those little pirogues. We're talking about vessels that are a bit larger than that, with specs that the Coast Guard will share with us, that will allow for some mobility along the shorelines of Tobago and mobility in and out of our marine park area. And that's critical. Currently, the Coast Guard works along with the Fisheries Department, and they do, in fact, have some monitoring of the marine park area in Boko and the lagoon area, but it is not enough given what we are seeing and what the intelligence is providing for us on the island. Secondly, we looked at the reorganization of our communities, and present in our meeting today, we had the Division of Community Development, Youth Development and Sport. Both the administrator and the line secretary were present at the meeting. And so we are looking at ways that we can reorganize our communities and provide adequate programming in our communities and programs to occupy our young people. But the programming is not enough, because we know that when we have the nice football tournaments, when we pull the community out for fun events and for activities, that sometimes you really don't get the young people who are inclined to live a life of crime. We sometimes are always catering, or as we say locally, preaching to the choir. And so more than providing social programs and training programs, which we have a plethora of, we are looking at how can we empower the community to take charge of its social security needs. How do we empower the community in such a way that the community is in fact brave enough to stand up to these criminals and to say, look, not my community, try somewhere else. We're talking about empowered communities that are willing to report criminal activities, empowered communities that are willing to shun criminals and to say, look, you are not welcome in my community. And I want to be very clear. Families, communities, you are to shun criminals from everywhere. And last time I spoke with you, I spoke to you about the fact that you ought not to be encouraging bad company to be resident in your community. And I stand by that. You cannot encourage people that you know that are involved in criminal activities and give them a lifeline and a platform and give them support in your respective community. But we take it. Communities might be timid and not empowered, and so it's about creating community-based institutions that are empowered, that are resourced enough, that they feel confident to stand up to these criminals and to ensure that they work along with the TTPS, work along with the agencies of state in apprehending said criminals. And of course, that means partnerships. Partnerships including the National PTA, partnerships including the faith-based organizations, and ensuring that they play a role as social institutions in reculturing and retraining our young people. You know, when most of us were younger, and I'm getting to that age when I could start talking about when I was younger, we all at some point had strong influences from some faith-based organization, whether it's through the VBSs, whether it's through Sabbath school or Sunday school. We all just had influences from religious leaders who gave us some moral groundings. And this perhaps is a call for churches to do more than just encourage the planting of seeds, but a call for churches to return to the community and in return plant seeds of hope in the community and ensure that our communities feel empowered and gets a sense of spiritual grounding. And not just faith-based organizations. I spoke about the National PTA. We are also going to target village councils, those that are functional, that are operational. We are going to target our sports groups in the communities, our youth groups, and ensure that they are properly resourced and that they get the support from not just the THA, but from the wider community in ensuring that they can help us in this stand against increasing levels of criminality. Thirdly, I wish to speak to two sectors of our tourism industry. I wish to speak to the accommodation sector and those in the transportation sector, in particular those with rental companies. Through TITL, we are going to create a platform that every guest house, every Airbnb, every hotel, everyone in the accommodation sector, and every car rental can put into a database everyone that comes to rent a room or a car here in Tobago. And this is whether you are coming from outside of Tobago or you are a Tobagonian looking to rent somewhere temporarily within the island of Tobago. This database is to allow us to have in real time information of who is staying where. The reality is that those with the propensity to commit crimes are very mobile. They tend to sometimes rent 3 and 4 places, 5 places around the island, and they move about quite often. And so by you ensuring that you report through this database, you voluntarily report through this database, you can in fact keep your families and your establishment safe. Because we will have the opportunity through the TTPS at a centralized location to see who is where and at what time. And of course, that helps us in keeping you safe and also protecting the integrity of your varying establishments. It is quite similar to what we see happening through the airport, where the TTPS will receive a flight manifest that will tell them who is coming to the island and who is leaving and so on. It falls within the same sort of parameters. Then we also looked at the use of technology in general on the island. In particular, we look at the camera systems. We know that there are just over 180 cameras that are installed and fully functional on the island. And we are still challenged by the fact that these cameras feed the information to a centralized base in Trinidad. And sometimes it's a bit challenging getting that information readily available to the local police force here in Tobago. And so we have explored ways in ensuring that we can have that access to the localized force in a faster time frame. But more than that, the Tobago House of Assembly itself is doubling down on a previous commitment of ensuring that all of our camera systems across all of our properties across the entire island of Tobago are connected through one network, and that network is being monitored daily 24/7, so that in real time we can in fact have access to critical information and help us with not just prevention but the apprehension of criminals. And finally, we have agreed that we are going to begin some community engagements as a team, and I'm happy that the minority leader has agreed that he will join me along with other members of the national security apparatus. And together we will all come to select communities across the island so that we can begin to have some real engagement and conversations about safety and security on the island. And have conversations to the extent that we can also teach you in practical ways how to keep yourself and your families safe, but to also look at your security concerns that we may miss at this point and ensure that they are addressed. Finally, I will say to you, Tobago, there is a definite requirement for us to work together as a community. I am of the considered view that the majority of us in this country are good people. The majority of us in this country are law-abiding citizens. We cannot cower in a corner while a few are destroying our island. They're killing the vibes of the country. And we as a broader community have to stand up against them. And I know we see that that minority as being powerful, as being influential. They have their music going on with them. They have their own vibes going on with them. And they behave almost like untouchables. But I kid you not, there's no power greater than people power. And so, given that the majority of us are law-abiding and good, the majority of us have to understand that we have a war that we cannot afford to lose. And we have to stand in this war as a community and stand against those who are determined to do evil. We just absolutely have to stand together on this front. It can't just be the government. It can't just be the police. It can't just be the licensing officers, who, by the way, are here and seated with me. It has to be a collective that includes all of us who are on the side of law and order. We are to stand in this battle against those who seek to destroy our paradise. And so with that, I wish to invite the minority leader to share some thoughts with you, after which I will entertain the questions. So Minority Leader, Mr. Morris.
Thank you, Honorable Chief Secretary, and let me say good afternoon to all of Tobago, Trinidad and Tobago. Couple weeks ago, I would have written to the Chief Secretary recognizing that we, at this time in Tobago, we are facing an unprecedented wave of criminal activity, including murders, especially gun violence. And thankfully, the Chief Secretary did accede to that meeting request, and here we are as one body, really saying to the criminal elements in Tobago and outside that in Tobago we are not going to tolerate that kind of activity. Tobago is too beautiful an island, too beautiful a space for it to be destroyed by this current wave of violence. And therefore, I am saying to all of Tobago, we should adopt the position that on the issue of crime, we are going to treat with this Tobago problem as an all of Tobago approach. So Chief Secretary, and I want to give all of Tobago the assurance that this minority, which I lead, will continue to work along with the executive, work along with the security forces to ensure that we can have the kind of response that would bring Tobago to the best kind of success. And therefore, we had very open conversations, very frank conversations. I want to commend the security forces as well for their efforts. I know it's not easy. Sometimes we sit and we believe that you can just wave a magic wand and then you would just simply be able to eradicate those in the minority that is trying to make our lives uncomfortable. But it takes work. And therefore, based on the impressions that I got, we are all here to do the work. We are all here to put in the effort to ensure that we can return Tobago to a very safe space. because this is unprecedented. We know that we have always been battling with issues of crime in Trinidad and Tobago, but Tobago has always been the safer of the two islands. That island that even Trinidadians believe that, when things get hot, they can come and relax and feel safe. For a long time, we boast about leaving our doors open, being able to come back without any, but the times are in fact different. And of course, it requires a different approach. It requires a different response. And I also want to speak to the Tobago people that even in this time, there will be some level of inconvenience because we are fighting against elements of people who are getting more and more creative. And therefore, when you see certain actions taking place in this space, know that it is taking place because it is in your interest, where the various authorities are in fact trying to protect you. So I'm asking for your patience. I'm asking also for your collaboration. And we are also asking for your partnership. And with those sentiments, again, I want to thank the Chief Secretary. I also want to send condolences to all the families, all the friends of persons who would have lost loved ones at the hands of these criminal elements. And just to reassure you that together we will win this fight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minority Leader. This time we will take questions from members of the media who are here and those who have joined virtually. Those who have joined virtually that wish to ask questions, you do so by raising your virtual hands. Those who are physically present, the microphone will be presented to you to ask those questions. So I'm seeing already virtually let me start with those that's in the room first. So, yes, good day, Miss Campbell.
All right, good day. So I'm a representative for Tobago Updates. And my first question is to you, Chief Secretary. You would have made a statement recently concerning mobsters from Trinidad staying away from Tobago. And based on the social media feedback, it may have been misconstrued. Can you shed some clarity on that remark that you made, please?
Oh, sure. So I was very clear, lucidly clear in who I don't want in this space. And I spoke directly, firmly, to those who fall in the category of mobsters, gangsters, badman, gunman. I spoke to those who fell in that category. And I am saying to those who fall in that category, quite categorically clear, that you are not welcome. We are not welcoming you. And if you are from Tobago and you also fall in that category, I am saying to communities that they ought to reject you as well. But I've also said with the same breath, in fact, with even more gusto, that our friends and family from Trinidad, you are always welcome. You're always welcome to enjoy here. But here is not for the gangsters. We don't want the gangsters here. And I understand what's happening because, you see, we have a minority who takes pride in, as the young people say, being fully done. And they attach a covert prestige to being fully done. This is an island of brightness. This is an island paradise that we don't want to be disturbed. And so for those who wish to come with ill intent, you are not welcome. For those who live on this island and you choose to be part and parcel of those criminal activities, your behavior is also unwelcome. And I'm asking communities and I'm asking families to reject you. And I think every community everywhere, including those communities in Trinidad, need to start rejecting and treating as social outcasts those that disturb our peace, our sanctity, our safety, and our security. Until we do that, the minority among us will feel that they have power and control, and they have the rest of us living our lives in fear. And so I hope that is lucidly clear at this time.
Okay, thank you. And my second question would be that persons have been saying that the ports provide easy access for criminals to traverse between the two islands. So persons have been clamoring for tighter measures to be implemented. So has any consideration been given to that?
Yes, the ports of entries, both at the air and the seaport, in fact provides avenues for criminal activity to be transported between the two islands. This is one country, two major islands. And of course, people being citizens have the right to travel between the both islands. And what we have found is that sometimes people travel more than just with suitcase with clothes and beach towels. They travel with things that are illegal. And we have been working with the Port Authority and waiting on the Port Authority for the longest while to introduce scanners. At the last meeting we had, that Security Council meeting to which I was invited, we again learned that the scanners were procured. We're talking about vehicular scanners, and that those scanners will be installed on the Tobago side of things, because the port in Port of Spain apparently does not have sufficient space to allow for the build-out. But the decision is to install it at the port in Scarborough. We really are waiting on that. We hope it doesn't take much longer, because that will bring some relief. It will also act as a deterrent for those who wish to put weapons in their vehicles, drugs in their vehicles, and so on, and travel between the both islands. So yes, we will want that done as quickly as is possible. This might also be a good time to encourage the Port Authority to upgrade its ticketing system and to be able to provide, as the airport does, to the TTPS, its sailing manifests as soon as the boat departs Port of Spain or Scarborough. So by the time the boat arrives on either island, we get a sense of who is coming to the island. More than that, that might require the Port Authority or the Inter-Island Ferry Service to digitize their operations even more. I mean, we are at a place in 2024 that I can't buy a ticket to leave Trinidad to come to Tobago from Tobago. When on the airport, I could buy a ticket anywhere in the world to travel between any of the two islands from any destination. So we have to do those, tighten up on those administrative things and those logistical issues. But the port, in fact, will provide some of the solution to this problem if the security measures at the port, at the seaport especially, are tightened. And that will include the installation of scanners at the port, vehicular scanners in particular.
Okay, thank you. I have one last question, but this one would be addressed to ACP Calicaza.
Sure.
The question is, to what extent do you believe that the 6, 7, 8, 9 or ABG movements in Trinidad are influencing crime in Tobago?
Thank you very much, Ms. Campbell, for your question. And of course, what I can say is that anyone involved in gang-related offenses are indeed a threat to national security. And therefore, we have identified these gangs as known gangs that are operating local, regional, and international. And of course, we have seen that they have penetrated the island of Tobago, and every effort is being taken to address the issues and their relationship with the persons with whom they are recruiting on this island.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for your questions, Ms. Campbell. And that last question, I think, provided some important information. And it tells you that this is more than just gangs we are dealing with, but perhaps we are dealing with organized syndicates. And if we're talking organized syndicates, you're talking about them being multilateral in nature, meaning that they exist in more than one jurisdiction. So it's not just national. You saw what happened with Plumpy Boss recently. If it's syndicate, you're talking about there being attached legitimate businesses to the operations of these criminals. If it's a syndicate, we're talking about them having order and a hierarchy among the ranks, having codes that they manage and so on. So this might actually be a bit more than just organized gang warfare, but really operations of crime syndicates. I see the hand of Elizabeth Williams.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chief Secretary, and of course, everyone gathered there. In terms of my questions, sorry, Elizabeth Williams, TV6 News. My question is to ACP Collis Hazel. I wanted to know from him, in terms of the joint police and army patrols, will this be sustained? Because many times, time over in Tobago, we see a situation where these joint and army patrols start when crime increases in Tobago, and as soon as there's a dying down of it. So it's just for a period, and then after a while, the joint police and army patrols are no more. Two of my other questions is for the Hotel and Tourism Association. I would like to hear from Mr. Lord if there have been any cancellations in the tourism sector with respect to crime. And I would also like to hear from the Tobago arm of the chamber, the chairman, Mr. Curtis Williams, as to if in terms of the Tobago economy, have there been any decreases in terms of effects in the Tobago economy with respect to crime? Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. Hazel first.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth, for your questions. I would want to say to you that this initiative that has been introduced in the Scarborough area is one in which you will see operating not only within Scarborough, but other districts throughout Tobago. I can tell you that with the resources that are available to us, we would ensure that such patrols continue. I want to give the public the assurances that these initiatives from time to time that you are speaking of in terms of the movements and so forth, it has to do with the resources that are available to us. And therefore, I would always tell each and everyone that crime is not static. It's a dynamic focus from time to time taking place in different areas. And therefore, we tend to shift our resources in order to treat with the problem at hand. So if it is affecting us most as it is doing in our Scarborough area, our focus of heavy resources would be placed in that area. Hence the reason you may have seen in the past operations taking other places. But I give you the assurance and the members of the Tobago public that we will be seeing this constant presence of a joint relations within the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, working in collaboration with the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force as we utilize a multi-pronged approach. And this is what came out of this meeting, a united force of us working together in order to lessen, to dismantle the gangs and criminal elements that have taken place in this country, and us working together as a team to eliminate such.
Liz, good afternoon. Thanks for your question. I can answer on behalf of the Hotel and Tourism Association because I was given that authority to do that. And I must say that the initiative taken at the level of this council have given the assurance that everything will be okay throughout the season coming up. We are actually in the July-August season and we're going into the Tobago Carnival. So rest assured, everything will be okay on our side, and I'm happy to know that. Also for the business community, we are much concerned. We are definitely concerned, and the assurance given to us today definitely will go a long way. So we're looking forward to a very, very prosperous and exciting carnival coming up from the July-August season. Thank you.
I will just add that we have been working with the Defense Force in providing access to ground transportation. So it's not just the Coast Guard, but the regiment. They will be they are being provided with ground transportation so that they will be mobile and be in a better position to assist the TTPS on their patrols, and also creating a stronger sense of security for communities, because you will see the presence of security forces in and out of a community in a much more significant manner. Finally, I see the hand of a Maxwell Taylor. So is Maxwell there? Okay, so perhaps we have lost Mr. Taylor, but I just want to close this briefing by simply saying to Tobago and Tobagonians at large that no one else can provide safety and security for you and for your community like you and your community. There is a role for you to play. You have to find a way to ensure that you stand united, just as we are standing united today, against the minority that wills to do evil. I believe Maxwell is now ready.
Yes. Good afternoon, Chief Secretary.
Yes, good
I
afternoon.
have a couple of questions, and the first one is with regard to the establishment of the direct line for the 999 system, with calls still going to Trinidad, and a time frame from when that would happen to go straight to Tobago.
I don't have a time frame at this moment, but I know that the instruction from the head of the National Security Council was already made, so that they are in the process of executing such an instruction.
And with regard to the preparation of the government quarters for the officers from Trinidad, where along that line are we at the present time?
Well, the Tobago House of Assembly continues to provide support to senior officers of our security forces. We continue to provide support in terms of accommodation. So as we speak, we in fact pay the rent for some senior officials on the island. In terms of government quarters, many of them were left in a state of disrepair for so long that it cannot be a short-term plan to repair those quarters.
If the reporting of the visitors' accommodation and rental is voluntary, what type of compliance is the House of Assembly hoping for to get to a level where it'll be effective in tracking people?
Well, that's why we had the Hotel and Tourism Association and the Chamber of Commerce in the room with us, so that we are doing this as a united body of stakeholders, including those representatives of those proprietors on the island. And yes, some may choose not to, that's your choice. But it is us offering an avenue through which we can keep you safe, your family safe, and of course, help you maintain the integrity of your enterprise.
With the land-based operations for the Coast Guard, how effective would a couple vehicles be in trying to track down the guns coming in on these vessels?
No, Coast Guard will only be using their vehicles to get between the bases along the coastline. Because currently, I could tell you the naval lieutenant, she begged a drop to come to this meeting, right? Coast Guard can't beg drop to go between operational bases so that they can activate. They need to be able to move between and among their bases and at different seaports on the island. So Coast Guard is not so much concerned about land-based operations. Coast Guard is only concerned with the seaward operations. The access to vehicle for Coast Guard is so that they can simply get to different ports along the island in a timely manner. Secondly, the Defense Force, whom we are providing vehicles with, who began collecting those vehicles last evening. Some are on their way to them as we speak. They will collect the remainders today. They will be assisting the TTPS in doing patrols all around the island. Currently, we have in regular routine 8 vehicles assigned to the TTPS, for which the Tobago House of Assembly stands the costs, the rental costs of those. And just last night, we added a further 4 to their operations so that we can have the kinds of patrols that is required on island.
Last question. Should people be concerned about their privacy with the hotels and the other guest houses reporting to a database?
Anyone staying at a public accommodation should not be concerned about privacy. If you check into hotels anywhere in the world, they tend to ask for identification. If you go on Airbnb, then your credit card information has to be used. So once you are not staying downstairs by granny or by auntie, issues of privacy doesn't even come up when it comes to staying at publicly advertised guest houses or Airbnbs or hotels, or you are in fact renting vehicles. And I'll say this because we didn't talk a whole lot about licensing, who was part of the meeting today. But rental companies have a responsibility to also take copies of licenses, DPs, driver's permits, and so on. And we recognize that some of that is actually not happening. So we're not asking for anything so strange that it will be difficult to implement. Ms. Williams, I see your hand up again.
Yes, good afternoon again, Mr. Chief Secretary and your team. I did not get a response from the hotel and tourism sector in terms of Mr. Alpha Lord. Wanted to find out from him if any cancellations have been coming into the hotel and tourism sector with respect to crime. And also, since we have Infrastructure Secretary, Mr. Trevor James, seated there, did Mr. James, I don't know if he will be able to tell us, if he spoke of any issues with licensing officers' operation in Tobago while the officers came up from Trinidad, if he had any concerns that he spoke of at the meeting, at the crime meeting you held.
Right. So to your first question, Mr. Lord is saying no. They have not received cancellations as a result of our uptick in murders. And the issue with licensing, that did not arise in the way that you have mooted it. So apologies there. But I could share some information with you that I think might be good for public consumption. That the public ought to know. That the public ought to know that over the last 2 months, that with the efforts of licensed officers, they were able to acquire through their stop and search exercises 5 illegal firearms. There were 20 people driving without driver's permits. They were able to ascertain that there were at least 4 vehicles in last week alone that were driving with either duplicated chassis numbers or with registration that appears to be fraudulent. So far, internal audit has required that 2 of them were in fact fraudulent, and those 2 are already taken off the registry, and the audit is being done of the other 2. They were also able to apprehend persons wanted for robberies and shootings on the island. The licensing office is also indicating that currently in Tobago there are 5 officers, 3 of whom are law enforcement officers, 2 are dealing with on the administration level, and they intend that once every 3 months to get some additional support from their colleagues in Trinidad until such time as they are able to increase the human resource, the human capital at the at the licensing office in Tobago. And perhaps given that we have licensing here and the issue came up, one of the things that's popping up is that we in fact have persons, in fact at 3 rental car companies, it was found that we had vehicles there with fraudulent chassis numbers. It seems as though those with criminal intent have acquired the technology to be able to change the chassis numbers and to make it look as authentic as possible, and create duplicates in the system so that they are able to go and commit crimes undetected. The TTPS actually reported that for the murders that we have seen, that they have almost all been committed with the use of stolen vehicles on the island. I'm sure you saw the shootout at Wilson Road. That was stolen vehicle. The one in Argyle, same story. So there is a pattern that we are getting at that needs to be dealt with expeditiously and efficiently.
Okay, thank you. I have 2 more questions, both addressed to ACP Collis Hazel. The first one would be as it pertains to the investigation of the most recent murder that happened with a young lady by the alias Dolly Boss. Has there been any update on the investigation, any results of the autopsy or any leads that you can share with the public? That's the first question. And the other one would be, what is the TTPS's stance as it pertains to the issuance of firearm license for law-abiding citizens?
Thank you very much, Tobago Updates. I would want to see to the first question that dealt with the issue of the active investigation that is taking place as it relates to the last murder. I want to tell Tobagonians this, that enough is enough. We have endured too much, and at this point in time, it is time for us to ensure that our efforts show that success to which our oath of office is calling. Having said that, we want to give the Tobago public the assurances that we are redoubling our efforts in ensuring that our citizens remain safe and secure. This cannot be done with the TTPS alone. A multi-pronged approach has been established, and the execution of such plans will take place. And in so doing, you will from time to time, be involved in a level of discomfort. I would say no more on that. However, I would want Tobagonians to join with the forces of national security to help us to eradicate crime and criminal activities on this island. We all have to live here. We all are Tobagonians. And when we accommodate and when we hug up the criminal elements, may it be our families, our friends, or visitors alike on this island, to destroy and to dismantle our lovely, beloved island, we are doing an ill justice to ourselves. So the clarion call for all of us in Tobago, just as we have done today, is to unite, to come together, and to show that level of force that we have had enough on this beautiful island. And we are not prepared to tolerate anymore as we stand together on this island. I want to give you the assurances that the investigation, as it relates to the last report of murder on the island, my officers are working diligently and relentlessly in ensuring that we bring the perpetrators of this crime to justice. However, while we depend on all evidence that are available to us, if there are anyone outside there that can assist us in any way possible, I entreat you to reach out to the offices of the Assistant Commissioner of Police or to any police officer on this island with whom you do have trust and confidence to share your information. There's also the opportunity to use our covert methods of using calling 555, 999 Crime Stoppers, in sharing your information so that we can all get information which in turn turns to evidence that can help us to solve this crime. I want to thank those persons who have been supporting us, and I ask you to continue to support us as we fight the battle. However, we in the TTPS and all arms of national security remain steadfast to our oath of office and to our commitment and love for this beautiful island, that we will not give up. I thank you.
I thank you very much. And as your question about FUL, just apply, follow the process, and see where it takes you. At the end of the day, it seems as though getting the FUL remains in the hands of the Commissioner of Police. So I would say to law-abiding Tobagonians who so desire to have FULs, you just do the necessary application and engage the process lawfully. Don't go and buy no gun from no man in no corner who is not a licensed dealer. And you can't buy without having the actual FUL. Let me warn you on that. And I want to bring this to a close by saying this. You know, I visited the crime scene at Argyle. And what stood out for me is that in the forefront of where the homicide took place, there were freshly drawn in the streets a hopscotch box and a moral box. And literally behind that was the blood of the victim. And as I spoke with parents and guardians in the area, the adults in the area, they were all commenting about who ran, who dove, who got scrab up, as we say, who fall down, all trying to grab their children out of harm's way. There was one gentleman driving home with feed for his animals. He went to cut the grass and had it on his van back, going home. Mr. Elliott going home to be able to feed his animals. And he tried to put in reverse gear and get out of the situation. When he saw what was happening, they shot at him. He could have been a dead person. Thankfully, he was just hurt by the glass from the windscreen. But they shot at him. And the point I am making to communities across Tobago, and if you're from Trinidad, this obtains for your community as well. Communities must not be welcoming to agents of criminal activity. And I really don't care who vex. You could send as much threats as you want, post it online. You could slander my name. I really don't care. You are involved in criminal activities. We don't want you here. And if you're from Tobago and you are involved in criminal activities, we don't want you either. We will have to treat you as an outcast until such time as you choose to behave yourself. But the only way we could have that sort of resolute activity or activation is by the community uniting and saying, we are on the side of good, and if you're bad, we are going to excommunicate you from our community. We have to take such a harsh and bold stance against those who wish to destroy the integrity of our democracy. I thank you. I thank all those who participated today. We will continue to speak with you as we roll out these activations, as we described them earlier on. As the ACP pointed out, we continue to ask for your patience in the event that there might be inconveniences caused by these activations. Thank you again, and Tobago, you continue to be a beautiful island, and we continue to work in unity, in cohesion, one with the other, as we create the greatest little island on the planet. Thank you, and God's richest blessing.